Standing in the center of my newly opened interior design studio, I took a moment to absorb the vibrant energy around me. The walls, painted a soft gray, were adorned with sketches that danced with creativity and potential. Fabric swatches in rich colors were scattered across the table, each one whispering the promise of transformation. After years of late nights and relentless hustle, my dream was finally a reality. I could hardly believe it. It felt surreal, like stepping into a world I had only imagined. The sun streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow on my workspace. I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing the journey that had led me here. Hours spent in design school, poring over textbooks, and learning from my mentors had built a solid foundation for my career. Every setback had only fueled my determination, and now, as the owner of my own studio, I felt a surge of excitement. This was my chance to prove myself. Among all the projects I had lined up, there was one that stood out, a collaboration with Victor, a wealthy businessman known for his influence in the city. His reputation was that of a man who appreciated artistry and luxury, and I felt honored that he chose me to design his office space. I envisioned the transformation, how my designs would reflect his status while also expressing my unique style. The thought sent shivers of anticipation down my spine. Weeks passed as I immersed myself in the project. I spent long hours sketching, sourcing materials, and refining my vision. Each day, I felt more confident in my abilities, and I could almost see the completion of the project shimmering on the horizon. Victor seemed pleased with my progress, and his occasional compliments fueled my ambition. I was ready for the final presentation, convinced it would be the turning point in my career. Finally, the day arrived. I meticulously arranged my designs, ensuring every detail was perfect, from the color palette to the layout. As I stood before Victor, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. This was my moment to shine, to showcase everything I had worked for. He looked over my designs with a critical eye, nodding in approval at the concepts I had poured my heart into. There was a glimmer of excitement in his gaze, and I felt a rush of validation that I had longed for. After the presentation, Victor assured me that payment would follow upon completion. I left the meeting brimming with optimism, convinced that this project would not only solidify my reputation but also provide the financial stability I desperately needed. I could already picture myself reinvesting in my business, expanding my portfolio, and finally enjoying the fruits of my labor. However, as days turned into weeks, that optimism began to wane. I finished the project, meticulously executing every detail as promised, but the anticipated payment never arrived. I tried reaching out, sending emails and making phone calls, but each attempt was met with silence. The excitement that had once filled me began to morph into a heavy weight of confusion and frustration. It was in those quiet moments, late at night when the city outside my window was still, that the reality of my situation hit me. I was drowning in bills, each envelope a reminder of my financial struggles. The dream I had fought so hard for felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and the betrayal of Victor's silence stung deeply. How could someone I had trusted turn their back on me so easily? As I sat at my desk, surrounded by the remnants of my hope, a fire ignited within me. Betrayal is a powerful motivator, and the feeling of being wronged awakened a dark desire for revenge. I had poured my heart and soul into my work, and now I was left with nothing but empty promises. The thought of Victor enjoying the fruits of my labor while I struggled to make ends meet was unbearable. I was done being the victim, it was time to take control of my narrative. The wheels began to turn in my mind. I could be more than just a designer, I could be the architect of my own justice. I started to imagine what it would take to reclaim my power, to remind Victor that actions have consequences. In that moment, my life shifted from one of creativity and passion to one of calculated determination. I would not let his betrayal define me, I would rise from the ashes and make him feel the weight of his choices. Determined to reclaim my sense of control, I dove deep into the labyrinth of Victor's life. The process felt both exhilarating and suffocating, a tangled web of emotions that both thrilled and repulsed me. I spent hours hunched over my laptop, scrolling through social media profiles, news articles, and even public records, piecing together the fragmented puzzle of his existence. Each click revealed a new layer of Victor, the wealthy businessman who had so effortlessly cast aside my hard work. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a sordid detail that ignited the flames of my fury. Victor was engaged in an extramarital affair with a coworker named Sarah. The revelation struck me like a thunderbolt, electrifying my resolve. The thought of him betraying not just me, but also someone who trusted him, filled me with a sense of vindication. I felt justified, as if the universe had presented me with a chance to balance the scales of justice, albeit in a way that was morally ambiguous. As I gathered more information about Sarah, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. She seemed like a genuine person, someone who deserved better than to be caught in Victor's web of deceit. Yet, the more I learned, the more I felt the anger swelling within me. I envisioned Sarah confronting Victor, the confusion and heartbreak that would inevitably ensue. In my mind, I painted the scene, her disbelief, the way her hands would tremble as she processed the betrayal. I knew this would not only hurt Victor but would also shatter Sarah's world. My heart raced at the prospect. It was a twisted form of justice, one that would leave me feeling empowered. But as I sat there, staring at the glowing screen, I wrestled with the moral implications of my plan. Was I truly doing this for Sarah, or was I simply seeking revenge for my own hurt? The line blurred, and I felt a cold sweat break over me. I could easily justify my actions. Victor had wronged me, and now he deserved to feel the weight of his choices. But did that entitle me to inflict pain on another person, innocent in this tangled web? I could hear the echoes of my conscience, warning me that revenge could become a dark rabbit hole I might never escape. Despite the inner turmoil, I decided to move forward. A plan took shape in my mind, one that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I would meet Sarah at a cafe, a neutral ground where I could reveal the truth without the distractions of the outside world. The thought of what I was about to do sent adrenaline coursing through my veins, igniting a mixture of dread and excitement. I envisioned the conversation unfolding, Sarah's eyes widening in disbelief as I laid bare Victor's betrayal. I imagined the look of devastation on her face, the way her world would tilt on its axis. On the day of our meeting, I arrived early, my heart racing as I sipped a lukewarm coffee while waiting for Sarah. The cafe was bustling, a cacophony of laughter and chatter that felt at odds with the storm brewing inside me. I scanned the room, my mind racing with what I would say, how I would say it. As I caught sight of her walking through the door, an unexpected pang of empathy washed over me. She looked radiant, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to crash into her life. As I approached her table, the weight of my intentions bore down on me. Sarah greeted me with a warm smile, her eyes sparkling with excitement, completely oblivious to the truth I held. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach as I prepared to shatter that innocent facade. The moment stretched like taffy, each second feeling like an eternity. I was stepping into a role I had never wanted, the harbinger of pain and betrayal. When I finally spoke, the words tumbled out in a rush, a torrent of truth that felt both exhilarating and devastating. I watched as her smile faltered, eyes widening in disbelief. The shock etched across her face was a sight I would never forget. In that moment, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, a fleeting victory that quickly morphed into something darker. As Sarah's world began to crumble before my eyes, I realized that I had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. The satisfaction of revenge was bittersweet, a fleeting high that left me grappling with the weight of my choices. As the whispers of Victor's infidelity began to swirl around the office like the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, I found myself perched at the edge of a chair in my studio, overwhelmed by a cocktail of emotions. I watched him from a distance at the cafe across the street, my heart racing with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Victor, once the epitome of confidence and charm, was now a shadow of his former self, his bravado crumbling under the weight of his secrets. It was intoxicating to witness the unraveling of someone who had wronged me so deeply. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tracing the intricate patterns of the fabric swatches scattered around me. Each piece of material, each color, reminded me of the dreams I had woven into my designs, dreams that had been tainted by betrayal. I couldn't help but feel a surge of vindication as I imagined the chaos erupting in Victor's world. He was losing not just his reputation, but also the respect of those around him. I wanted to revel in his downfall, to bask in the glow of my own perceived justice. Yet, beneath that thrill was an unsettling hollowness, a whisper of discontent that clawed at the edges of my conscience. Days passed, and the atmosphere shifted. I could sense it in the hushed conversations and furtive glances exchanged among Victor's colleagues. They no longer laughed at his jokes or sought his approval. Instead, there was a palpable tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. I observed it all from my studio, my heart racing with a dark exhilaration. I had done this, I had thrown a stone into the calm waters of his life, watching as the ripples expanded into waves of turmoil. Yet, with each passing day, my triumph felt less like a victory and more like a poison coursing through my veins. Then came the unexpected moment that shattered my illusion of control. Victor reached out to me, his voice strained and desperate as he offered to pay the debt he owed. I could hear the fear behind his words, the panic that clawed at him as he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. It wasn't remorse that motivated him, it was the dawning realization that his empire was crumbling, and he was powerless to stop it. I felt a rush of emotion wash over me, a conflicting blend of satisfaction and pity. As I sat in my studio, the check in my hand, a wave of vindication surged through me, invigorating my spirit momentarily. But as the adrenaline faded, I was left with a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't shake. The thrill of revenge had been fleeting, a brief spark in the dark, and now I was left with the ashes of my actions. I had played a part in Victor's downfall, but at what cost? I had become the architect of his misery, and the weight of that realization began to suffocate me. I thought about the lives I had disrupted, the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of my vendetta. In my quest for justice, I had lost sight of who I was and what I truly wanted. I stared at the check, its crisp edges a reminder of the price I had demanded for my pain. It was a hollow victory, one that left me feeling more like a villain than a heroine. The emptiness gnawed at me, a relentless ache that refused to subside. I had set out to reclaim my power, to assert my worth in a world that had tried to diminish me, yet here I was, feeling more powerless than ever. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to find clarity in the chaos swirling around me. The path I had chosen was riddled with shadows, and I could no longer ignore the darkness that had seeped into my soul. I needed to confront the reality of my actions, to understand the true cost of my revenge. In that moment of introspection, I knew I had a choice to make. The thrill of vengeance had proven to be a hollow pursuit, and I yearned for something more, a chance to reclaim my dignity, my purpose, and the essence of who I truly was. As I stood in my studio, the air thick with the scent of fresh paint and varnish, I couldn't shake the weight of my actions. The rush of vindication I had felt when Victor's life began to unravel was now replaced with a gnawing sense of emptiness. I had sought revenge, believing it would bring me power and satisfaction, but all I had achieved was a fleeting moment of triumph. I gazed out the window, watching the world pass by, and I realized that while Victor had paid for his betrayal, I had paid a price far greater, my peace of mind. The morning light filtered through the glass, casting elongated shadows across my sketches. Each design represented a piece of my heart, a fragment of my dreams, yet now they felt tainted by the darkness of my recent choices. I had become a spectator in someone else's suffering, and it struck me that I was no better than Victor. He had hurt me, yes, but my retaliation had only perpetuated a cycle of pain. I longed to break free from the shackles of resentment, to reclaim my narrative without the burden of vengeance. As I wrestled with these thoughts, the door swung open, and in walked my mentor, Elena. Her presence was a balm to my troubled spirit, a reminder of the passion that had once ignited my journey into interior design. She sensed the turmoil swirling within me, her keen eyes piercing through the facade I had put up. I felt a mixture of embarrassment and relief, knowing that she would not shy away from challenging me to confront my choices. We settled into the plush chairs of my studio, surrounded by the very essence of my aspirations. Elena began to speak, her words flowing like a river of wisdom. She reminded me that true success isn't measured by how much we can hurt others, but rather by how we uplift ourselves and those around us. As she spoke, I felt something shift within me, as if a fog was slowly lifting. The idea of revenge seemed more like a burden than the empowerment I had initially believed it would bestow upon me. I started to visualize a different path, one that led away from destruction and toward creation. What if I redirected my energy into my work? What if I channeled my experiences into something positive? The thought was liberating. Instead of allowing bitterness to fester, I could create a community project aimed at helping aspiring designers find their voice. I envisioned workshops where I could share my skills and inspire others, helping them to navigate the complexities of the industry. This was the legacy I wanted, not one born from revenge, but one rooted in support and mentorship. The more I pondered this idea, the more clarity washed over me. I could use my experience with betrayal not as a weapon, but as a tool for empathy. Perhaps my own struggles could resonate with those who had faced similar challenges. A sense of purpose began to blossom within me, a vibrant flower pushing through the cracks of my past. I felt invigorated by the prospect of building something meaningful, something that would foster connection rather than division. With renewed determination, I dove into planning the community project. The days ahead were filled with excitement as I reached out to local schools and organizations, seeking collaborators who shared my vision. I poured my creativity into crafting a curriculum that would not only teach design principles but also encourage resilience and self-expression. I wanted to inspire others to overcome their obstacles, just as I was beginning to do. As I worked tirelessly to bring my project to life, I found solace in the act of creation. Each workshop I planned became a testament to my growth, a way to reclaim my narrative from the shadows of revenge. The more I invested in uplifting others, the more I felt the weight of my past decisions lift from my shoulders. I was no longer defined by my desire for retribution, I was becoming a beacon of hope for those who needed it most. In those moments of clarity and purpose, I understood that true power lay not in vengeance, but in the ability to rise above it. I had the choice to rewrite my story, to transform my pain into something beautiful. As the project began to take shape, I felt a burgeoning sense of fulfillment that I had never experienced before. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I could forge a path of healing and growth, turning my back on the darkness that had threatened to consume me. As I sat in my beautifully adorned studio, the sunlight streaming through the large windows illuminated the countless sketches and fabric swatches that surrounded me. Each piece represented not just my vision but the culmination of years of hard work and perseverance. My business was thriving, and the accolades I had received for my designs filled me with a sense of pride. However, Victor lingered in my thoughts like a shadow, a constant reminder of the choices I had made in my pursuit of vengeance. At times, I would lose myself in the memories of the chaos I had unleashed upon him. The exhilaration of revealing his infidelity to Sarah, watching her heart break, and witnessing the unraveling of Victor's carefully crafted facade had once filled me with a perverse pleasure. I had thought that exposing him would grant me the closure I desperately sought, but it had only served to deepen my internal conflict. I had become the architect of someone else's suffering, and as I reflected on my actions, I felt the weight of that responsibility heavy upon my shoulders. The phone rang, jarring me from my reverie. It was Sarah, her voice warm and filled with a newfound strength. She expressed gratitude for the truth I had revealed, explaining how it had allowed her to reclaim her life. I listened intently, her words washing over me in waves. It was as if I had been granted a glimpse into the healing process she had undergone, one that I had not anticipated. Hearing her speak with such confidence and clarity stirred something within me, a sense of redemption. I had never intended to help her find herself, I had only sought to inflict pain on Victor. Yet, in doing so, I had inadvertently played a role in her resurrection. As we spoke, I felt a strange sense of closure beginning to take root within me. Sarah's journey of healing mirrored my own, albeit in a different context. I realized that while my initial motivations were rooted in anger and betrayal, the outcome had transformed into something unexpectedly positive. I had the power to shape my narrative, and with it, the potential to redefine my relationship with the past. Instead of allowing Victor's betrayal to define me, I could choose to rise above it. But just as I began to feel a sense of peace, I stumbled upon news of Victor's downfall. The headlines screamed of financial misconduct, a scandal that had forced him to resign from his position. I felt a pang of guilt wash over me, a reminder of my own hand in the events that had unfolded. The satisfaction I had once derived from his suffering began to dissipate, replaced by a conflicting mix of relief and remorse. Had I truly wanted to see him destroyed, or had I merely wished for him to suffer as I had? In the days that followed, I grappled with these emotions. The memory of my once vibrant ambition to seek revenge now felt tainted. I had gained recognition and success in my field, yet the cost of that victory weighed heavily on my conscience. It was a stark reminder that vengeance often comes with collateral damage, and I had not been immune to its effects. While my business flourished, the shadow of Victor's downfall lingered like a specter. I was reminded that the pursuit of revenge often leads to unforeseen consequences, ensnaring not only the target but also the one seeking retribution. I had hoped that by tearing down Victor, would elevate myself, but instead, I found myself questioning the very principles that had once guided me. In my quest for justice, I had become entangled in a web of my own making, and the realization was sobering. It was time to confront the reality that the past could not be rewritten, nor could I erase the choices I had made. Instead, I needed to embrace the lessons learned and channel my energy into building a future free from the shackles of resentment and anger. As I stood among the sketches and swatches, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I was determined to rise above the shadows of revenge. I would focus on cultivating my business, nurturing the relationships I had forged, and finding fulfillment in the work that had once ignited my passion. Perhaps, in doing so, I could inspire others to see the beauty in healing rather than the allure of vengeance. As I entered the bustling venue of the business networking event, the air was thick with ambition and the unmistakable scent of expensive cologne. My heart raced not just from the excitement of showcasing my work but also from the underlying tension of what I might encounter. I had come to share my successes and forge new connections, yet the ghost of my past loomed large, casting a shadow I hoped to escape. There he was, Victor, standing at the edge of a small group, his once commanding presence now diminished, a stark contrast to the confident man I had once admired. His shoulders slumped, and I could see the strain etched on his face. Moving deeper into the crowd, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions as I approached him. Part of me wanted to turn away, to avoid the man who had betrayed my trust and almost destroyed my dreams. But another part of me, one that had grown through the trials of the past months, urged me to confront this moment not with anger but with a newfound strength. As if sensing my presence, Victor turned, his eyes widening in disbelief. Our gazes locked, and for a fleeting moment, I saw vulnerability where once there had been arrogance. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, tinged with desperation. I nodded, curiosity mingling with the remnants of resentment as we stepped away from the crowd, seeking a quieter corner. The soft hum of conversation faded into a dull roar, and for the first time, I truly examined Victor. The man who had once wielded power over me now appeared fragile, a man stripped of his defenses and grappling with the repercussions of his actions. I know I've made mistakes, he began, his voice faltering. I'm not the man I used to be, and I need help to rebuild. My reputation is in ruins. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of their implications. A part of me wanted to revel in his downfall, to bask in the satisfaction of having brought him low. I had spent countless nights dreaming of this moment, of exacting my revenge for the betrayal he had orchestrated. Yet, as I stood there, I felt something shift within me. Without fully understanding why, I chose to extend my hand. I can offer you some professional advice, I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Victor looked taken aback, as if he had expected scorn rather than support. The surprise in his eyes was palpable, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope flicker within him. I felt empowered in that moment, a shift from the role of the victim to one of agency. As we discussed strategies for rebuilding his business, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation wash over me. I was no longer defined by the betrayal I had endured. Instead, I was choosing to rise above it, to break the cycle of vengeance that had threatened to consume me. I offered him insights into rebranding, emphasizing the importance of transparency and integrity. Each word I spoke was not just for him but also for me, a reaffirmation of my growth and the path I had chosen. As the conversation progressed, I realized that Victor's fall from grace had exposed not just his unethical practices but a larger narrative of greed and moral decay in the business world. The truth was coming to light, and it was no longer my burden to carry. He would face the consequences of his actions, and I could do nothing but watch as the pieces fell into place. I left the event that night feeling lighter, my heart unburdened by the anger I had carried for so long. In choosing compassion over revenge, I had reclaimed my narrative. I understood now that true strength lies not in the desire to hurt others but in the ability to forgive and move forward. The shadows of my past no longer dictated my future, instead, they had shaped me into someone capable of empathy and resilience. As I stepped into the cool night air, the stars twinkling above me felt like a promise of new beginnings. I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, free from the chains of resentment, empowered by the choices I had made. I had learned that sometimes the greatest victory is not in the downfall of others, but in the elevation of oneself.